radiological damage, which is the result of the cancers and the tumors, all of the birth defects, they absolutely confirm chromosomal aberrations from the ionizing radiation damage to the cells and the tissues. Neurological problems, rashes, cataracts, kidney problems. Your life is messed up. As said in the Groves Memorandum, it's going to cause all these health problems, and there is no medical care and treatment. You can't reverse radiation exposure damage to the body.
This represents a depleted uranium particle. The styrofoam ball in the center is millions of atoms of uranium, and the toothpicks are the tracks of the alpha particles that are released from the uranium nucleus. When these pass through the cell, they release tremendous amounts of energy, which cause the cell processes, enzymes, and hormones to malfunction. When there are billions of these distributed throughout a body, they cause diseases in many ways, and that's why Gulf War syndrome is a complex system of diseases caused by malfunctioning of all of the parts and the processes in a cell that make life possible.
Some of the soldiers were losing their mind.
Dennis Kine served in the U.S. Army until 2003 with the rank of Specialist D4. A graduate of the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical School, today he serves as a veterans advocate. Kine also graduated magna cum laude from San Jose State University.
We bombed on January 17th. We started bombing. We bombed for 45 days. And after 45 days, February 28th, we started a ground invasion, which is said to be the most victorious military operation ever in the history of mankind. Well, it wasn't victorious. We got sick immediately. On March 1st, Lieutenant Colonel Ziem issued a memorandum that stated specifically, we better have somebody advocate for the use of this weaponry, otherwise the environmentalists might get upset. On March 3rd, they called a ceasefire. So from the date Lieutenant Colonel Ziem's memorandum was issued, 2 days later they called a ceasefire on March 3rd, 1991, and on March 8th another memorandum was issued saying all soldiers in this area should be protected by wearing their safety clothing. So in 1 week's time, they had 2 memorandums and a ceasefire that pretty much indicated why all the soldiers were sick.
If the American people could only wake up and see what is happening, you know, this is a tragedy. You know, we're not the first victims of war. In many cases, our wounds are invisible. You know, we carry them inside of us, and it's only through specialty testing and specialty diagnostic testing that you can isolate and find these particular mechanisms involved, whether they be chemical, biological, nuclear, or other agents that would cause what has become known as Gulf War illness, Gulf War syndrome, Persian Gulf illness. There's no such thing as a syndrome. This is an overlapping combination of toxic and other exposures that varied from individual to individual depending on where they were at, what they were exposed to, and how long and the duration of their exposures.
In a cubic meter of air, there are 1 billion particles, a tenth of a micron, in diameter. An ordinary man breathes 28 cubic meters of air a day. And for that reason, our soldiers, internally contaminated to depleted uranium, have billions of particles of depleted uranium distributed throughout their bodies. DU can be found in all parts of the body. It has been reported in the bladder, in the semen, in the bone marrow, in the lungs, and the brain. Because of the contamination of the semen from the depleted uranium particles, soldiers returning internally contaminate their wives and their partners.
It wasn't so much my illness, but my family was also ill, and they required medical attention and medical treatment, real medical treatment. I retired in June of last year, June 2003. As soon as I retired, my family was completely dropped from the military medical system. In other words, we were enrolled at the Womack Family Practice, and as soon as I retired, we were dropped like a hot potato. And although I begged and pleaded, they would not let my family re-enroll back into the Womack Family Practice. So in essence, my wife was completely cut off from all the medications and all the treatment that she had received for the past 7 years that dealt extensively, because she was also a victim of these exposures that I brought home from the Gulf War, from my equipment and from my personal exposure, as I alluded to earlier, from bodily contact, and that to me is the greatest travesty. I just can't imagine how a nation, not only will they take care of their veterans that have returned from war, but you have innocent family members and loved ones that never put their hand up and swore allegiance to fight and defend the Constitution of the United States, and they get kicked to the curb and nobody cares.
When you get these health effects, you have to prove to the United States Department of Veteran Affairs that you were exposed. And then you have to prove that the health effects that you're seeing were caused by the exposures you have. But it's very difficult to do when the medical records have been destroyed, the personnel files have been missing or destroyed, and when you got senior Department of Defense officials continue to state, well, none of these guys are sick, none of these guys are dead. Why don't you ask Sue Reardon someday about Terry? Why don't you ask Sue Sitten someday about John? Or Frank Zuley? Or Mr. Kiefer? Ask his granddaughter why she'll never enjoy her grandfather. And look at the Iraqi women and children and men. Ask the question yourself. Is winning a battle but contaminate air, water, soil, and food worth the life of your son and daughter? Is it worth the life of the child? Not just those that are alive, but those that are going to be exposed, because the contamination remains there for eternity. It's real simple. I was tasked to clean up the uranium munitions by name, by order, during Gulf War I. I was assigned as the depleted uranium project director. I did the research. I prepared the programs. I wrote the regulations for management. I wrote the procedures for management. And I got sick because I served my nation. And I was discarded. I was abandoned.
Depleted uranium weapons are designed not only to kill the enemy, devastate the civilian population for generations to come, but DU weapons also destroy the environment and damage the economy. In 1996, the United Nations passed a resolution that made DU illegal under international law.